morning, everyone. On behalf of IMC, I welcome you all to the day 3 of India Mobile Congress 2023. Today, the topic of discussion we have is TMT's Eco Drive, Sustainable Networks and Recycling for Tomorrow. With this, I would like to invite on stage our first esteemed guest, Mr. Theo Seng Nick Erickson, Head of Strategic Network Evolution. Sir, please join us on stage. To join him next, we have is Mr. Sandeep Gupta, Senior VP Supply Chain Management, Bharti Airtel. I now invite Mr. Andrew McGee, Senior Director Solution Architecture, Telco Media and Entertainment, Red Hat. Our next panelist is Ms. Akanksha Sharma, Global ESG Head, STL. I would also like to invite Mr. Suresh Kalbugi Shankar, CEO CTDI, India. And to join them all, we have Mr. Masood Malik, CEO, Sustainability and Refining Private Limited. With this, I would like to introduce you all with our moderator for the day, Mrs. Namrata Rana, partner KPMG. I would like to request her to take the proceedings ahead, ma'am. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here and my esteemed panelists. It's my real pleasure to sort of be here to talk about something really critical to all of us. We are in a rapidly warming world, which essentially means that we are hitting 1.5 degrees and we are likely to cross it very, very soon. That is a time of concern for everybody because it not just means devastating impacts on the world around us, it also impacts the way we do business. And the importance of warming on our lives essentially means that we need to rethink how we actually look at energy consumption, material consumption, and the rapid movement of digitization. As we all know, we are in the Mobile Congress, and the reason for this is that the mobile consumption all across the world, and in India as well, is rapidly rising. A rapidly rising mobile consumption, digitization essentially means more energy utilization. And obviously that is going to impact global warming. It also means that the kind of materials that we use for telecom infrastructure, for mobile phones, all that is going to be in much more demand. So where is all that material going to come from? What are we going to do with the existing mobile infrastructure that exists? Are we going to keep adding to the mountains of waste that exist in our cities? That and more is the topic of our discussion today. And I really hope that you enjoy this session and we come out with some really important things that we can do to transform the world around us. And also, at the same time, look at deeper mobile penetration and growth for our country and the economy. Thank you. Hello. Yeah. To begin with, I'd like to ask my panelists to really talk about what sustainability means to them and their organizations and what they think is the most important thing to build circularity.
Thank you, Namrata. I'm privileged to work with a sustainability company. The name of the company is Resustainability, and that's what we do. For us, sustainability is practically our entire business. And the way we look at it, we look at it through three lenses. One is integration. And integration for us means that we do not see sustainability through just a narrow lens of, oh, I collect waste, or I process it, or I recycle it, or I make products back, or one aspect of circularity. Integration means all aspects of the entire value chain to be managed. The second aspect of integration is how you actually measure what you do. And we measure it not just in terms of economic value, but we also measure it in terms of the carbon footprint, the water footprint, the resource footprint of what we do. So integration means that you look at your business holistically end to end in terms of the physical aspects, but also in terms of the environmental aspects, in terms of the resource aspects. The second aspect of what sustainability for us is inclusion. Inclusion means actually all of you, our partners, our clients, the societies and the communities in which we operate, the so-called informal sector. I work in the recycling space, and the role of that aspect of our society, that part of our society is extremely critical. So inclusion, and inclusion going just beyond the direct stakeholders into innovation partners, R&D partners, and therefore the entire sort of broader definition of inclusion. And finally, circularity in everything that we do. So when we look at recycling electronic waste, which is probably the discussion point today, we don't just look at what is there on the PCBs. We recycle plastics, we recycle metals, we extract precious metals, and therefore circularity in absolutely everything. And for us, it is not just an economic activity. Sometimes one of the components of a switch, it's not economically viable to recycle it. We'll still recycle it. We'll find the viability in another component. So I think these three elements working together, integration, inclusion, and circularity, is what sustainability is for us.
Okay, I'm Tiao Sing from Ericsson, right? Of course, if you use the mobile data, right, compared to 5 years ago, you use more mobile data, you probably use 5 to 10 times more, right? And of course, you're getting some subscription from the mobile operators. The more you use the data, the more actually the networks need to build more frequencies and equipment, right? So Ericsson as the equipment vendors, right? Of course, we'll keep on supplying equipments to the operators. Then sustainability to us is we categorize into sort of 3 problems, right? So number 1 problem is when the data consumption goes up, and of course you consume more energy, right? So we come up with one sort of a target. We call it the breaking the energy curve, right? When the data continue to consume more, but the equipment to produce per gigabyte need to be sustained with the same level of energy, right? So this is the first effort that we produce the equipment with less power, and we encourage the industry actually move towards the 5G more quickly. What we have tested, the 5G technology is actually carry 10 times more data per carbon footprint, right? The faster we actually move to 5G, then we will sort of break the energy curve. Well, you consume more, but the energy curve is actually the same, right? Then, of course, when we sustain the energy curve, we need to bring it down, right? But how to bring it down, right? A few initiatives that we actually come up with, for example, if you have 3 radios hanging on the tower, we combine the radio with a triple band or a 4 band of radios, then you effectively reduce the carbon footprint by half, right? By evolution of the technology and replacing the old equipment with the new equipment, we commit to bring down the carbon footprint by 50% in 2030, right? Then, of course, it will continue to come down, so we commit by 2040, the power consumption in our supply chain has to be come down to reduced by 90%, right? But still, you have some equipment still running there and generate some energy, right? Now we are talking about the net zero. That means something need to be done more to absorb the carbon footprint. Ericsson actually invests a lot in projects like planting the mangrove, go back to the environment, so that whatever which is left over, it is necessity to transmit some power. We have some project to absorb back the carbon footprint. That's where we call the net zero. right? You produce, let's say, 3 million tons of carbon dioxide. You should have some project to absorb back these 3 million tons of carbon dioxide. So IPCC actually set a net zero target at 2050. Ericsson actually committed to achieve the net zero by 2040, right? In 2030, we reduce half. In 2040, we reduce down to 10%, and we have some projects to again come back to the CO2 absorption to achieve the net zero. So Ericsson is committed on it. Not only it is a target, but we report the achievement that we have transparently, so the industry actually as a whole motivated and follow the footstep.
Good morning, everyone. Sandeep Gupta from Airtel. First of all, thanks for choosing this topic. I think it cannot be more apt that we need to start focusing on this as the technology evolves. And as you rightly said, Amrita, the traffic consumption, the reach, and the capacity requirements increase as to what is the flip side of this. At Airtel, I think there's a lot of focus has been over the past couple of years, but has been increasing now on having sustainable networks. We do a lot, but I'll kind of focus on the key pillars that we take this approach on. I think starts very much from the networks we want to deploy, the planning of the networks itself, as to what kind of technologies, what kind of solutions are we putting up in the networks, which meet the coverage and the capacity requirements of the end users in that given geography, with the most lean solutions from both weight, power, and transportation consumptions, and so on and so forth. So that's how we want to start ab initio from the network design itself. The second aspect of that, included in this first pillar, is that the network that we deploy have to be future-proof. It cannot be that something which has a limited lifespan and we'll have to rip and replace as the next technology comes up. Most of the 4G layer that we deployed in the past 6-7 years is all software upgradable to 5G, and that's the approach that we have taken, so that we don't have to rip and replace the electronics and the metal and all that equipment that goes into the network. It's all software upgradable, and it's relatively smoother. You just take one card out and plug one card in at max, and then you are ready to kind of radiate 5G. I think that's the first pillar, is the network design. As an operator, then I think a big focus, and that's the hot topic, is energy. So it's about operations. So responsible operations, sustainable operations of the network is the second big pillar and the biggest focus area. How do you use the technology that comes from our partners, but also from the processes, using software, using AI, how to optimally run the networks, how to design the network operations based on the utilization of traffic, how to predict traffic using AI software. We have invested and developed our homegrown softwares which predict traffic utilization. The mantra earlier used to be switch off the base stations at night when there is low traffic, but traffic moves, right? In mobile network, traffic moves. So even in daytime, there are cells which are very underutilized. So now we have software in our networks which predict that traffic utilization in advance, and they start shutting down the relevant electronics if there is no utilization, and that saves energy. Of course, the infrastructure that we build our networks on in terms of tower material, types of batteries that we use are ones which are more eco-friendly. Another focus area in operations is minimizing transportation. So how can we use our operating centers, network operating centers, software, latest operating processes to minimize a manual run to a given site or to a given home for a customer complaint? Can we do that through remote interventions or central interventions? That saves a lot of fuel and a lot of carbon emissions, because every home run would mean a person taking a vehicle, go down a couple of kilometers and come back again. So that's the operations part. And then the last part is the life cycle management of the equipment that we have, as you both touched upon. It's about extending the life cycle through software upgrades, taking it to the next generation. Repair and refurbishment, where we use some of the other partners on the panel here to see how can we stretch the life cycle by repairing and refurbishing the equipment that we have and stretching their life, their useful commercial usage. And then once it really comes to the end of life, then partnering with the recycling firms on responsible electronic waste, metallic waste, and even hazardous materials, how the batteries and so on and so forth, how we responsibly recycling it in the meaningful manner in this environment. So I think that's where the key focus areas have been. Airtel has also committed to reduce our own carbon emission by 50% by the fiscal year 2031, with a baseline of the fiscal year 2021, and then net zero by 2050. And that's what we are committing to. Happy to share that we are on track of it using the developments. But I think this is just the beginning of the journey. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here, first of all. And to your question, Amrita, so I represent STL, Stellar Technologies. We are leading digital technology and infrastructure company. So what we essentially do is manufacture optical fibers, deploy them, as well as manage the entire digital infrastructure and technologies around it. So in a way, we address the complete circle of integrated connectivity solutions. And this is very interesting to me because it also gives us an opportunity to address the wide spectrum of sustainability when it comes to the telecom space. Right from managing our supply chain which is a very unorganized sector, in a sustainable way, and then leading it to product design. Then how can we build more innovative solutions around eco-friendly products? And very happy to share that we have just launched one of the eco-labeled product, which is world's first certified green product in the space at IMC this year. And addressing the entire value chain in terms of also looking at our customer up the stream solutions, because we are selling our solutions to all the large telcos around the world. It also gives us an opportunity to look at the other components when it comes to sustainability, which is the last mile connectivity solutions. And it also extends to communities and the social aspect of it. At the same time, also integrating a very high level of governance when it comes to data measurement and reporting. So in totality, to answer the question of what sustainability means to us, it is, an integration of all the associates on sustainability when it comes to driving last mile solutions in all the aspects of product design, deployment, as well as technology. To cite some examples, we have achieved some key practices in terms of waste management. We are first in the world to have integrated solutions on zero waste to landfill. And not just that, we are 60% circular economy company, which means that, around the world, whatever waste is generated, and, there's a lot of packaging waste when it goes to, deployment of fiber, which is addressed by looking at alternate ways in adjoining industries. And I think this is a very big transition, not just, from a linear to circular economy, but also looking at opportunities where we can build more pockets to look at a minimal use of material. So reduce and recycle is one thing, but how can we build more sustainable use of material, which are, optimal, which could be optimally utilized. Another interesting example is that, when it comes to connectivity solutions for the communities, we are trying to also create use cases around sustainable deployment of fiber. For example, how can we build right kind of telemedicine or education leveraging technology in some of the remotest areas where, connectivity is still very difficult today. And this is what we are trying to do. So in brief, for us, it is the last mile solutions, both up and down the stream, and with a 360-degree lens, that sustainability is core to us. Thank you.
So is this working? Yep. To answer the question, what does sustainability mean to us? At Red Hat, I'd like to start with a nice definition of sustainability, which applies to a lot of different scenarios. So I think it's a very elegant. And that is, definition of sustainability is meeting our needs today without compromising future generations' ability to meet their needs tomorrow. And when you think about that, any company or business that is striving for longevity needs to start thinking like this. And it's true that a lot of our customers, and nearly practically all of our customers around the world, are looking at sustainability measures for their business for this reason. It just makes good business sense. You know, if you can't see the future for your business, that doesn't make any sense at all. So sustainability is something, not only is it the right thing for the planet and the right thing for all of us, but it is good for business and it's good for the bottom line. So there's a win-win straight away, you know, that incentivizes businesses and companies around the world to strive for these sustainable measures. What we're doing at Red Hat internally is we have a carbon neutral goal by 2030. So we're trying to make our software business completely carbon neutral. So we're taking it seriously as well, so we can talk with our customers and our clients and our partners about sustainability. Some of the more technical and practical things we're doing, working with customers, to Sandeep's point as well, really focusing on power consumption and energy. Energy is, you know, I think GSMA predicts that the telecommunications industry uses 2 to 3% of humanity's power consumption. That's an enormous amount just in one industry alone, right? So if we can help our customers reduce that energy consumption and that power consumption, it's good for their sustainability metrics and their sustainability goals, and it's also good for their business and their bottom line again, right? Makes things more efficient. We're working closely with partners such as Intel, who obviously make CPUs. We're an operating system provider and a container platform provider. So we're working very closely with partners to how can we make compute platforms more energy efficient? How can we tell compute platforms when is it time to hibernate and when is it time to wake up? And it turns out this is really difficult and a tricky thing to get right, because if you think of making a phone call, we can't wait for a computer or a CPU to spin up and wake up in the middle of a phone call. So finding the sweet spot for how we can hibernate cores in a CPU and how we can wake them back up is a really difficult process, and something there's a lot of R&D and engineering effort going to at the moment. And I also working with partners such as Ericsson, we're doing very similar things around power consumption with CPU providers as well. An interesting project from the open source community that Red Hat is driving and championing is called Project Kepler. Project Kepler is now enabling us to get very, very detailed energy metrics from CPUs, much more than we had in the past. And why this is important is that what we do then is we take these metrics from CPUs in real time, and we have pre-trained machine learning models that we run this through to give us predictions of energy consumption in the future. So if you know your electricity costs or your energy or your carbon footprint costs, we can plug that into Project Kepler and give you real-time statistics on your energy usage across all of your clusters, across all of your compute, or think of your cell sites, etc. And then also do predictive analytics. How much is my energy consumption going to be in the future if demand peaks? You know, if there's a cricket match on, as Sandeep was mentioning earlier, right? So being able to predict that, not only predict your energy consumption, but your energy costs in the future is great. And that gives us the observability, and it gives us the dashboards to be able to monitor this and track it and trend it. But the next step after that, once we have these detailed metrics and we're able to capture this information, is how do we write automation to act on it? So how can we take action to, maybe we want to tell things to go to sleep. Maybe we want to tell clusters to spin up when energy consumption is low. We can take programmatic action on this data once we've collected it and measured it. So we're working on ways with automation to do things like CI/CD and GitOps to programmatically adjust the compute and hence the power consumption of these platforms in our telco providers' environments. And when you think about it, you know, doing this one time in one data center is one thing, but when it's multiplied across hundreds of thousands of sites, that's a big energy consumption saving for our customers, and hence a dollar saving as well, and hence better for the planet. It's interesting when we think of power consumption, it's not just the power, but power consumption also equals heat generation. So when you have heat generation, then you have cooling. And when you have cooling, you have even more power consumption. So it's kind of an iterative process. Reducing it by a little bit can exponentially reduce the power consumption. So, and then multiplying that across large sites and deployments, that's where we have a real impact for our customers. So there's very interesting stuff happening, and the AI does play a part in this, as you can see, in just predicting energy consumption and controlling the levels of consumption we have at any one time. I know we were talking earlier about AI can be power intensive in itself, but there are ways around that by pre-training models just once and then using that model in certain places, for very specific kind of purposes such as power prediction.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the panel. I think we have a great mix of panelists here, right? From being in the, the infrastructure, the transport side, we have the active network side, we have carrier, and of course, we have recycling at the ends of this panelist here. So I'm glad to be here. We are the world's largest aftermarket services company, CTDI, and present across the globe, I would say. I would say we are in the most important part of the sustainability story of the industry, right? In a single word, I would call it as we are a aftermarket services company, and which contributes to constructive recycling of all the equipments and infrastructure that we deploy in the industry, right, to make the network work here today. To help the companies, organizations, be it carrier or the ODMs, to reduce, reuse, and redeploy, right? So it's all about, why I use the word constructive recycling is that, there is the first mile recycling and the last mile recycling. So I'm sitting here at the first mile, so our friend Masood is sitting at the last mile there. So both are very, very important. There's like two sides of the coin, right? So we help all the organizations to manage their assets properly, most efficiently. How can I reduce remanufacturing? How can we reuse, and how can we redeploy? So this is a story on which we all work together, right? And between these three areas, again, we go much deeper into it, right? What is the true sustainability means? It is also looking at how can we reduce the multiple hops between the way the infrastructure is deployed, and then how is it managed on the field, right? Just-in-time supplies, multi-point deployment, and warehousing, right from reducing the movement of logistics, traceability. So I think we should be looking at more in terms of the practical aspect of what is the real sustainable story between the cradle to grave, right? So we follow a complete responsible way of working from cradle to grave in terms of helping both the ODMs as well as the carrier. I think there's a lot to go. We need to work together in the industry for whatever panelists we have, as well as the way the industry has to be constructed here. So definitely we are in to look for better ways to manage, better ways to reuse, and of course, how can we help in terms of reducing the power consumption. Of course, the power is a major area that we all need to look at it. But repair, even right from harvesting the components, cannibalization. So these are some of the areas where we intricately work with our customers to give them the right solutions. So that's the story about us, and we are in for the support for that.
Some really interesting points made out here, and I'm really curious but to understand where as an industry we stand in terms of sustainability. So there are many things that are happening in pockets, but if 10 were to be the maximum, where do all of us think that the industry is at? Any numbers that you would like to give? Are we at 1, 2, 9, 8? Sustainability. If 10 is the highest we need to reach, where do you think that the industry is?
Well, I'd like to think we can never get to 10 because there's always another step we can take, right? So that's a really hard one because there's pockets that are more advanced than other areas. Yeah. I think there's some places
just at the top of your head.
6.
6? Okay. I think we are at 2.
I think when we talk about sustainability, we actually think it's synonymous with decarbonization to a certain extent. Carbon is the currency of sustainability of today, at least. And unfortunately, when we talk about decarbonization, the first thing that comes to our mind is energy, which is fair. It's a big part of our carbon footprint. But I must say that the life cycle carbon emissions of this Pragati Maidan, but 45% is actually in the materials. and it is locked in those materials the day it was constructed, in the choice of where this wood comes from, where that steel is made, and all of that. So decarbonizing materials is where we are probably at a 2. Energy, I think we have made some progress. In the wider definition of sustainability, which means so many different things to so many different people, I think it is anyone's guess.
So true. But then what is it that we can do collectively? When we say decarbonize materials, use different materials, do better design, what does it really mean as an industry, as business models that need to be created? Do you have some?
So back to the rating 1 to 10, right? I want to comment that what is 10, right? I mean, 10 is supposed to be net zero, right? Net zero, that means whatever carbon footprint that they produce, there is a mechanism to absorb it back. This is net zero, right? If you look at from vendors' perspective, like Ericsson, right? I would say we rank ourselves. We have done a lot, but there's still a lot more to do. We rank ourselves maybe 1 or 2 because we have 30 million tons of CO2 in the whole value chain itself, and we commit to reduce by 50% in 2030 and reduce down to 10% in 2040, right? As compared today versus 2040, we still have 90% to go, right? And also a lot of effort to plant the mangrove, use of renewable energy to actually cover back the carbon footprint that we sort of produce, right? But then, of course, based on the survey, ICT industry only contribute to the 1.4% of the carbon footprint in 2050, right? But of course, using a digital technology, and of course 5G is part of it, right? For example, you use digital technology in a home, you do a smart home, and you don't have to use the light, you automatic switches off, right? So using the digital technology in all the segment is actually contribute to one third of the energy saving that come to the target on 2050, right? So I would say that from vendor perspective, we do a lot on the equipment side, and also not only that, on the supply chain perspective. For example, we reduce the travel. When we transport the equipment to the customer, we use a method that reduce the energy consumption. Want to accelerate the uptake of 5G so that the traffic goes up, then the power is sustained. Then we also work with our value chain, whoever supplier that actually come to us. We have to make sure that they also commit to this sustainability target. So we are halfway through. We have 350 companies that supply to us. Now we have worked with 200 over, which is 60% on the way, right? So it's the whole value chain itself, not only ourselves, but on our partners on supply chain, and also improve the adoption of the technology in various segments so that the society can achieve this target by 2050.
Thank you so much. That's food for thought, that, we are, at a different trajectory in different parts of the value chain. So, for instance, Andrew just said 6, but obviously you mean that in the context of the software sector, which is a high energy hog, but then energy is something that we are looking at very deeply in different aspects, and obviously there are solutions that are there in energy. And Masood very rightly said that in terms of material consumption, we are at 2 because there is so much more that we can do, so much more innovation that is required. But Suresh and I have been having many discussions on this, and I believe you have some thoughts on how we can collaborate to actually transform the sector.
Thank you. Yeah, of course, when I just come back to the rating, I would say somewhere average it out to approximately about 3.5 is what we are there, right? When we touch across the layers of the whole network, right? Of course, a couple of thoughts that I have always been having and pondering upon is, how can we bring a seamless collaborative approach as I told, of cradle to grave. So what is the scope for us to improve? What is that we can do better? Is, to cut through the technology. And the first thing first is that, bringing in some sort of a regulation, right? Because right now there is nothing called as a standardization in terms of the sustainability story itself, right? So I sense that it should start from a regulation standpoint and bring some sort of a measure or a metrics as to what is that sustainability means for each industry standpoint, particularly in the telecom side, right? And we need to have some sort of an understanding as to what are we going to agree to bring this as an index of sustainability. And then, of course, there should be also amount of traceability. Like, I think as against what I see in the other part of the story, like say the IT and some of the pollution control norms that we have a EPR, Extended Producer's Responsibility. So I don't think I've heard this term in EPRs in the telecom network side. What are we doing against the EPR? So who is responsible for it? What is the traceability? What is the accountability? And also interoperability, interportability. Like, so can I deploy the assets across the region? Can we reuse it across boundaries? Like transboundary understanding. Like, can it go from a higher up in the economic scale to a lower in the terms of developed to a non-developed, or a OECD to a non-OECD country? So how can we look at redeploying the assets there? Like, say, while our friends of the vendor side are there, so where can I put it in the lower side of the value chain? Like, say, when we have the forward economies like US to European Union to India, like from 5G or 6Gs we are talking about, like where is the 3G being deployed? Are we really extracting the last drop of the juice out of the network, last juice out of drop of the assets that we have deployed across? So does it really, is it really a meaningful thing that we are doing as an industry? So these are the questions that I really drop.
Very valid ones, and specifically the one on traceability. I mean, we are a sector which is where large number of players in the sector are in the organized space, right? Telecom by its very nature means connectivity. So traceability should not be a problem for us, should not be a challenge. Accountability and finding people to actually, look at sustainability practices, look at circularity should be easy. But what's holding us back? Sandeep, you've been in the sector for a very long time. What are your thoughts on this? If we could just share the microphone, that would be great.
I think there are two aspects of it. I mean, as an industry, as telecom industry, what we have contributed was kind of proven in the COVID era as to how did ICT support the whole globe when we were all under lockdown conditions, right? How did good coverage, good quality connectivity enable people to work remotely? And if we were to now stretch that in the post-COVID era, can we really avoid air travel, road travel, and so on and so forth, and have still continue with the virtual meetings and so on and so forth, to reduce that kind of impact on the society? So that's the pride, at least we all in this industry or associated with the industry should carry, that's one direct contribution we are making by getting good quality. The other small point before I come to the traceability part I want to do stress upon is the connectivity is also a good quality connectivity, irrespective of which G it's on, allows digitalization of processes, allows the reach of those digital processes, and digitalization of also very traditional industries like manufacturing and so on and so forth. Reduction of paper, reduction of the need for cables and so on and so forth in manufacturing plants, modernization of that. And that is also having a direct relation to the kind of materials we use, the kind of carbon footprint we create in those traditional industries, which were very, very guzzlers of high intense raw materials. Now coming back to traceability, you're right, Namrata. I think telecom as an industry, I mean, since it's all about connectivity from the end user right up to the center of the network and then back to the next user, it seems that it should be quite easy, but I think we are still, and we were having that chat earlier prior to this, I think the kind of standards or the plethora of standards that we see in this domain, what are the parameters that one should measure on, is still in very nascent stage. There's a lot of confusion. And I'll, of course, request Masood then to delve a little bit more on this, because he had some good insights. And that is what is hampering right now, right? I'm quite happy that at least SEBI has now given very clear BRSR things on ESG and what you should do. There are nine categories, and each is based on SBTI-based scientific parameter-based reporting on what we did last year, what's the goal, and what is the tracing plan. But I think we are in very nascent stages of it, from what should be measured, how it should be measured, and how it should be reported. This needs a lot of collaboration and convergence. Otherwise, every company will just start getting confused and start reporting in a different fashion, and may have an impact, may not have the desired impact of what is required out of the focus on sustainability from a society perspective.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. Akanksha, do you think reporting is the solution?
See, I feel that reporting brings a lot of transparency, but like how Sandeep and we were also discussing earlier, there is so much of confusion with multiple reporting standards and practices going around. I think some uniformity and standardization would really help. And I definitely see that coming in the years to come, and it's an evolving space, definitely. But I think specific to this sector, I would like to just throw upon and, add some points, my 2 cents to the question, the previous one. That how, ICT as an industry is contributing and is expected to expand by about 60% annually. Having said that, this is the traffic. Mobile alone contributes to about 7 million tons of CO2. And it also amplifies the waste that's generated across the value chain. Now, having said that, it's also important to understand that, businesses operate on cost. And 90% of this is coming from down the stream, which adds on to about 25% of OPEX in terms of only energy. So energy is becoming much more expensive and is adding on to the OPEX. So I think some really structural changes that the industry can subscribe to. For example, when it comes to optical fiber, so fiber over copper, which is not just more efficient and faster, but is also more greener. Also, more and more going through innovative products like, eco-label methodologies. And I think in the whole plethora of more and more reporting standards and just connecting the 2 questions, I think we are somewhere losing the focus on innovation, design, and performance when it comes to sustainability, which is the core essence of, reporting. And there is more focus on, how can we elevate the reporting standards and the transparency, but it should be more about how can we improve the product design, making it more sustainable, reducing the waste and optimizing, the energy consumption and things like that.
Such a valid point, because that's really why the open source industry succeeded. Because they were not stuck on regulation, but instead they just focused on the fact, can I make this product better? Andrew, any thoughts on that? What can we learn from that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I just want to touch on something Sandeep said before too, is that there is cause for optimism here, because, even in my time in the ICT industry, if we think back 30 years, the devices and the compute and the things in our data centers and the things at our cell towers, they've become more and more efficient. We always hear about, computers are becoming more powerful and they can do AI and things, but they're also, and it's not often heard, that they're also becoming more power efficient. Even a server in a data center now is way more power efficient than it was like 20 years ago. If you think about 20, 30 years ago, we had whole rooms full of computers that guzzled enormous amounts of power, and they probably didn't have the amount of computing power that you have in your watch today, and your watch uses a tiny, tiny amount of power. So the trajectory is good. Yes, we are using more compute than ever, and yes, there seems to be insatiable demand for more. We want to have high-def TVs, and we want to have the bigger and better, but it is getting more efficient, and so the technology is improving all the time. To get to your point about open source, look, I think open source plays a really valuable place here to rapidly progress innovation. So, and this is one of the things, the beauty of open source is it's not constrained by proprietary systems, it's not constrained by a lack of resources. Everyone can contribute to it, whether you're an individual whether you're an organisation or a for-profit business, everyone is contributing to open source projects. There's thousands and thousands of them out there. And even the one I mentioned before, Project Kepler, there's hundreds of people contributing code, figuring out ways to make it better, testing it, improving it. And this is where really rapid innovation happens, and things can move very quickly, which is why companies like Red Hat exist, to try and harness that and then bring it to businesses in a robust and enterprise-grade fashion. But open source development, whether it's just in software or even in hardware, is where change can happen very quickly, and where all of us can play a part to contribute if we want to get involved in these projects. You may not be a programmer or a software engineer, but you can contribute to open source projects in a number of ways, with documentation or evangelism and things like that, to go out and champion projects that you think can make a difference in the world, particularly with sustainability.
So a sustainability center of excellence that helps everybody, and not just key players would be fabulous. Masood, your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. And I think realizing the potential value that exists in this opportunity. I think a lot of time is spent talking about sustainability as a challenge, the 1.5 to 2 degrees threshold, etc. Let me put a slightly different lens on this. At last count, circularity alone, that means the recycling sort of opportunity, a resource recovery opportunity alone, represents $500 billion worth of economic value by 2030 in India alone. And nowhere this is more pronounced as it is in the TMT sector. We import 93% of our copper, 100% of our lithium, 100% of our nickel, 100% of our cobalt. There's a resource security angle. There is a scarcity value of resources angle that is associated with this industry and this opportunity. And you would not believe, till last year, we as the largest recyclers in the country, where was all the electronic waste being sent for processing? To the highest cost locations on this earth. We were sending it to Japan, we were sending it to Germany, we were sending it to Belgium for processing. Because we did not have a proper, fully integrated precious metals refinery that could really extract, the gold, the silver, the palladium, the ruthenium from all of this. Today there is. So having these centers of excellence, we recently commissioned this facility in the city of Hyderabad, and this facility represents a new benchmark in the country for the future of e-waste and TMT waste recycling and resource recovery. And it's a huge economic opportunity. I think linking the economic opportunity to the challenge is one of the ways to really making this mainstream, as opposed to something that we also do.
So good to hear that, because if it becomes part and parcel of everyday life and the way we do business, there is huge potential for change. So I'd like to invite the panelists to give their closing remarks in terms of what is the one thing that you would like to do, you would like to accelerate to transform our world. So Masood, taking from your point of view.
Yeah. So if I want to sort of do a closing on this, I think that the planet is for all of us, right? And the target is defined, net zero by 2050. I think all companies should sort of commit to it and have a good plan, go towards it. At least from Ericsson's perspective, we commit to reduce the carbon footprint by 50% in 2030 and net zero by 2040. Then, of course, reducing the carbon footprint is number one, but having some initiative to sort of having some project to absorb the carbon footprint is also equally important.
Thanks, Tao Singh. Yeah, I think the focus at Airtel is clearly defined, is to focus on greening our network. right? And that greening our network to achieve our commitment of net zero by 2050 is the target. It's the process, is the journey from now till that year. There are milestones defined. And the greening the network is spread across not just the sites, the radiating sites. We talked about the energy consumption, the product, and the upgradability of it. Also our operating processes, also the data centers, of how green the data centers can be, what kind of power we are using, how green that power is it solar or wind and or hybrid. So it's all across end-to-end, the 360 degree. And our firm belief is also that it cannot be done alone. It will require a cross-industry collaboration from left to right, all partners together to achieve this. It is a very critical industry. It has an impact across every human being and also non-humans as well, on plants and agriculture. I think we have to just continue the perseverance with this common goal in mind and stay together on it and kind of reach this for the future generations on this planet.
I believe the entire ecosystem movement towards achieving net zero, not just as one company or one sector, would really help, because like Namrata said, that it's by definition it's for connectivity solutions, and we all stand for, and determining gray spaces and the gaps where it could be identified as pockets for greening more. It could be product design or circularity or eliminating more plastics. I think these are the areas that the entire sector can together work upon. At STL, we have taken some really ambitious goals for becoming net zero by 2030. We are very progressively moving towards that. But having said that, only one company or one organization cannot determine, and the whole ecosystem should move together on this. And this is what I also urge forums like IMC next year to have more constructive and platforms where network providers and operators can together discuss on solutions across the value chain on decarbonization more and more would really help.
Well, apart from agreeing with everything that was just said, because it's all very valid, I think the one area I'd like to see focus on is modernising legacy technology. So, and at first glance, you may think, well, if something's working, why replace it? That's a carbon footprint just to replace equipment. But as I mentioned before, the efficiencies gained in modern technology, not just the hardware, but even software. So rewriting applications that are efficient, modular, can be reusable, because software runs on hardware and that hardware uses energy, creates heat, etc. Modernising those legacy applications will go a big way to sustainability. So when you think about it, how much 2G is still out there? How much 3G is still out there? These are legacy things that we need to really target to reduce. Why are we running multiple networks? Just because we have legacy technology holding us back. We can target those things, whether it's in the data center, whether it's in the, like with the mobile network, and reduce as many as we can. Move to modern technology.
Yeah, I think I would first like to draw upon what we discussed at the start of the discussion, is like, where do we stand? What is the rating? I think my first point would be to start with bringing in some sort of a benchmarking, right? Indexing of where is the network standing, or where is the device standing at, like in terms of what is your sustainability index, like say, are we at 7.5 or 6 or 8? So it all starts from first accountability and then reporting within, right? From both the carrier standpoint as well as from the design manufacturing side. We should see whether right from taking every component of the journey of a product, like whether it is a sustainable design, then you get a 1 mark there. And when it's a sustainable on the network, like what is a minimum life cycle guaranteed for this asset that you're going to deploy. So that gives you another mark. Then what is the reusability index? Then it gives you another mark. So we should bring in a very fragmented approach to this as a part of reporting and regulatory things, and give a benchmarking. Like if you buy an air conditioner, you get a 3-star rating, 5-star rating. So there should be a star rating for a network. There should be a star rating for every product that is getting manufactured. There should be a star rating for the whole journey of the network as a delivery mechanism, right? So all this should tie down back like the beads drawn into a necklace through a thread. So the thread should be the regulating body that should be both external to the government body or internal to the fraternity itself. Right? We should form our own consortiums to really, every leg is important here. Everyone has to collaborate. Think really in the way, are we committed to sustainability? Are we just going to be a high level story we are all talking? Are we committed to show it on the floor? So this is what I think is more important for the industry and the need of the hour, that we should bring up a sustainability index, and that index should be a reverse integration of all the practices from the manufacturing, design, deployment, reuse, delivery, last mile, logistics, fuel consumption, power, everything should be tuned into it, right? And then comes up the index there. There should be a benchmarking. There should be a healthy competition. Even the end user who is using and talking on a network should know, yes, I am talking on a network where its sustainability index is 7.5. I'm good. I'm supporting the cause. So I think this is a matter of education. It's a matter of commitment right from the last mile to the cradle to grave is what I can say. That's all I can wrap up. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been fabulous to listen to all of you. Some really powerful thoughts shared out here. And I'd just like to end by saying that we are in the biggest transformative shift of our times. This is the biggest shift since the Industrial Revolution. And the way that the things are transforming in terms of technology, in terms of climate change, they are really going to transform the way that we live, the way that we do business, and the way that the future is going to be. So it's up to all of us to bring change, and I really hope and really want that all of us transform our world into something that is sustainable, green, exciting, and very innovative. Thank you very much for all of you for being here with me. Thank you.